Should I plug my mouse into a USB 3.0 port? I'm looking for an authoritative answer, backed by data. A friend asked me the other day whether he would benefit from plugging his mouse into a USB 3.0 port instead of an available 2.0 port. I flippantly replied that it would make no difference at all. Certainly I'm not the only one to think that. See answers on Tom's Hardware, Overclock.net, Logitech Forums, Yahoo Answers. Intuitively, I don't think data throughput should be an issue. Mice worked fine over a serial port, and those transfer at a maximum of 112.5 kilobits per second. USB 1.0 runs at 1.5 MB/s, slow, or 12 MB/s, fast. USB 2.0 can handle 480 MB/s, and 3.0 can reach 5 GB/s. But what about response speed? Are there published studies of response time between USB 2.0 and 3.0 ports? My question is, was I right? Would it matter if I have a really fancy mouse? Can my friend safely blame his loss in League of Legends on his slow USB port?
A mouse is a slow device. The old PS/2 standard was RS-232C based, so USB 1 is more than adequate. USB 3 ports have extra connectors for the high-speed transfers, but also have standard USB 2 connectors for backwards compatibility. Unless your mouse has these connectors, and I cannot imagine that any mouse has, it will connect via USB 2 in a USB 3 connector. So you are entirely correct, plugging a mouse into a USB 3 connector confers no benefit whatever. If a mouse responds slowly, it is because something else is hogging the CPU to the detriment of the mouse driver.
Just because data rate of a mouse is very low and can be handled by USB 1.x, does not mean it can't benefit from being plugging into a faster controller. There are a number of factors in play here. USB 3.0 controllers support backward compatibility by performing enumeration in a way that is compatible with USB 1.x and 2.0 devices, and exposing a logical AC controller as part of the register map. The mouse will identify itself as a USB full-speed device regardless of the port and controller it is connected to. This will cause the mouse to appear logically connected to the AC controller, sometimes even OC/AC. Having a logical AC controller does not mean that the device is attached to a USB 2.0 circuit. The connection between system and USB 3.0 host controller will be higher speed, probably multi-lane PCI. It's also much less likely to go through a PCI-PCI bridge, which causes buffering and slight additional latency. Besides the host side connection, the transistors driving the USB pins will also have a higher switching rate, and instead of passive components for noise filtering, the bus will use digital switches in the filter network to allow it to be removed and not slow down USB superspeed devices. This was probably a bigger deal for the jump between USB 1.x and 2.0. The passive filter components present in the mouse should dominate. Still, rise and fall times could be a few nanoseconds faster. The registers of the AC controller also are implemented on the same die as the USB 3.0 AC logic, so the clock rate and digital performance will be higher. Of these effects, the PCI differences have the greatest impact on performance, especially compared to a USB 2.0 host controller connected via PCI-PCI bridge. In summary, a USB 3.0 host controller with a full-speed or high-speed USB 2.0 device is not the same circuit as the same device attached to a USB 2.0 host controller, and the timing will not be identical. However, any latency improvement will be at most a couple microseconds. I suppose it's possible that with some probability this would cause the mouse input to be relayed to the server in time to be processed one frame earlier. The probability is extremely low, well under 1%, and anyone claiming it affects their game performance is confused. In particular, the effects of network congestion are several orders of magnitude larger. Anyone trying to give themselves every technical advantage in the competition should focus their efforts there. Cross markings probably do determine the outcome of games at the highest levels of play. Choice of service provider almost certainly does.
We need to take a look at the mouse's polling rate, and from that we can have a better idea of how much data is being transmitted. If a mouse has a 100 Hz polling rate, it is sending data to the computer 100 times a second. A standard mouse will send a 3-byte packet containing info on XY position information as well as button information. Considering that 3 bytes are transferred each cycle of the polling rate, you could have 300 basis points being transferred. By default, the USB polling rate is 125 Hz, so by our logic, data being transmitted is 375 bytes per second. Based on this, I don't think USB 3 is going to be any more beneficial than USB 2 or even 1.
Technically, there are some cases where it would make a difference. Generally speaking, even when this difference exists, it won't be noticeable to even a professional player. USB 3.0 and USB 2.0 controllers on modern motherboards are implemented differently, primarily due to the data throughput USB 3.0 requires. In some chipsets you'd find the USB 2.0 appear as essentially a C device on a supercommunications hub that also handles all the other slow devices, like hard drives, audio, Ethernet, parallel and serial ports, etc. This existed in the Southbridge chip, which was then connected to the Northbridge through a media layer similar to a ChIXpress bus. The Northbridge handled the high-speed stuff, such as memory, graphics, ChIXpress, etc. This meant that a USB transaction involved several other transactions, then the media interface, then the interface to the CPU, before it was handled. USB 3.0 was introduced at the same time that the Northbridge/Southbridge gave way to the PCH platform controller hub. Most of the Northbridge duties were absorbed into the CPU itself, memory, ChIXpress, etc., while the remaining Northbridge duties and Southbridge duties went to the PCH. The PCH is essentially running off its CXpress slot. The paths, however, are still very different. Even though USB 3.0 and USB 2.0 are integrated into the PCH, the USB 2.0 is still implemented as though it's a SLOC controller device. There's no reason for Intel to redesign the silicon of a proven part, so it's integrated into the PCH the same way it was integrated into the Southbridge, with all the attendant bottlenecks and additional latency that it had before. However, the USB 3.0 is much closer to the CPU. While this is meant primarily to account for the increased throughput, it also affects latency. There are fewer transactions involved in getting a USB 3.0 transaction to memory, or to the CPU, and the interrupts may be triggered more quickly. However, the difference between USB 2.0 latency and USB 3.0 latency would be measured in nanoseconds. Certainly not noticeable by even the best Twitch gamers today. It exists, but it's practically useless.